Hey guys! So this is going to be a quick and unscripted video about diving into Ableton. So I'm assuming zero prior knowledge. This is for anybody that has never done anything musical in their lives that wants to start doing something musical with Ableton or with anything, but obviously this will be with Ableton. So let's dive right in because the best way to learn is to just get your hands dirty and start playing around with stuff. So this is Ableton. Welcome. Ableton 9 anyway. It looks a little daunting. There's a bunch of empty space here and not a whole lot going on, and at the same time a bunch of things going on. So don't get intimidated. It's just a few things right now, and there's only like 3 things that we need to know to get started. So first you have your audio track, and we have a MIDI track, and then these 2 return tracks that we don't really need to worry about right now, and your master track, which we also don't really need to worry about right now. So this is what it should look like to you when you get started. But we're really going to be spending most of our time in arrangement view. So this is session view. It's more meant for live performing, hence the live in Ableton Live. But when we're writing music, we're going to be spending a lot of time in arrangement view. You can get there by clicking these 3 bars up here in the top right hand corner, or alternatively you can hit tab. So here we go, arrangement view. Also looks very daunting at first. You have all these weird lines going on and like all the things are horizontal now instead of vertical. Totally fine. Not a whole lot to know here. First of all, this going this way, because we're horizontal, is now your timeline. So if you think of all this space as your time, and you can even see minutes and seconds counting down here. And then up here you have these numbers which correspond to the bars of music. So if you don't know what that is, that's totally fine. We don't need to worry about it right now. I can explain that in some future point in time. But let's get started. Let's start making music. So you'll notice you have an audio track and a MIDI track. Audio is anything that is like an MP3, a song, a WAV file, a FLAC, any sort of sound that is already made. So we won't worry about that right now. In fact, we can just delete it. So now we're just left with this MIDI track. Now what is MIDI? MIDI is instructions. By itself, it's not sound. In fact, if we started putting in a bunch of notes here and push play, nothing would happen. So how do you get sound then? Well, you get a synthesizer and you put it in this instrument sample or instrument area down here. And it even says drop an instrument or sample here. And what happens is you draw in your notes here, and then those notes are actually instructions that tell the synthesizer to make this sound, and then the synthesizer makes that sound, and then you have sound. So how do we do that? Well, the easiest way is to just go over here to your instruments. It even says instruments right here. And let's just play with one. I'm going to choose operator because it's one of my favorites. And you just click and drag it into the space right here. Or alternatively, you can just double click it and it just makes it as well. You'll notice that this changed to operator instead of MIDI. That's telling you that you have an operator on this track. We can rename this if we want. We can call it whatever we want. Except it doesn't show up in the whole thing, which is fine. So we've named this track now. It's not necessary, but trust me, when you have 70 things going on, it's definitely worth naming everything. And that's all we really need to do right now. Now we have a synthesizer. So how do we start making some music? Well, first we need to put in some notes. So the easiest way to do that is to click and drag any empty space, however much you want, and then right click and click on Insert MIDI Clip. You can also push Control-Shift-M or Command-Shift-M. There you go. Now we have this orange bar. You can make it any color you want. You can even give it a name if you want. You don't need to, but you can. But this still isn't doing anything for us. It's just an empty MIDI clip. There's no notes in there to tell the synthesizer what to do. So how do we start making notes? Well, the easiest way is to double click on it, and that brings up this piano. Now, if you've never played piano before, you don't know what you're looking at right here, that's totally fine. The one way to cheat is to just look at the notes that you can see scrolling down with my mouse. And over time, you'll learn like the different scales and like what notes sound good together. But for now, it doesn't matter. You can follow along, or you can just enter whatever note you want. But all we're going to do is just double click. And now we have a note. There you go. And if we zoom in here by clicking up here and clicking and dragging, zoom in, and you can see your note appears there as well. And it corresponds to this. So there you go. We've made music. All we have to do is click and push play. And there's your sound. Use spacebar to push play. And yay! Congrats! See? Not so hard. I'm just kidding. So we can add a few more notes here. Doesn't really matter what you add, just add a few notes. Just gonna double click here, add a few things in, and we can push play again. Boom, done. So now we have some music. Cool stuff. Now we can click Shift Tab to get back to our instrument, or alternatively you can click down here. You can see your notes like kind of really small right there in that little window, and you can click here for your instrument. Just switch that way. Shift Tab, that's what I'm used to. So how do we make this sound a little bit more exciting? Right now it's really boring. It's just that basic drab sort of sound. Well, let's just start twisting knobs. That's the easiest thing to do right now, just playing around. Let's just do that and see what it sounds like. Cool. Now we have a sound that's a little more interesting. There we go. I like that a little better. So how do we make this a little more interesting? Well, we can start adding effects to it. So we can go back over here to Audio Effects, and let's add a delay, because that's a quick and easy fix for everything. We have all these effects here that come with Ableton. You should have all of these, and they all do different things. And the easiest way to learn about them is just to Google about them. You'll find plenty of YouTube videos about them. But for now, let's just click on ping pong delay, have it down here. Again, you just double click on it and it appears down here. And let's not twist any knobs or anything, let's just see what happened. Cool. So I think intuitively you can kind of hear what happened. It took all the notes that we had and then it played them again at a later point in time and back and forth in each one of your headphones. Kind of a long explanation, but I'm pretty sure that's what you heard as well. So let's just take this dry wet knob and turn it down a little bit. All this means is that we're giving the notes like less of the sound is being sent through this instrument is an easy way to think about it. So if we put it all the way at 0, you don't hear it at all. And if we put it all the way at 100, you hear it a lot. So let's just turn that down so we don't hear it so much. There we go. So what's next? Let's add some drums. So we can do that by putting in another MIDI track is the easiest way to do it, like that. And there's a million ways to deal with drums, but this is the easiest way right now. Let's go over here and click on drums, and let's put in this Kit Core 707. Click and drag, and it'll take a second to load, and there you go. So let's make another clip, the same size, the same way. Highlight an area, Control-Shift-M, and you have another blank thing. So when we double click on this, you'll notice the piano now has all these names on it, like kick 707, rim 707, snare 707, etc., etc. This is what it does when you have a drum rack so that you can easily see what is where. That's all you need to worry about right now. So let's add some kick drums, 1 every 4 beat. So double click to make a note, and I'm going to drag this out so that it fills up 2 spaces, so that it's 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, like that. And click and drag. Alternatively, you can do Control-D, and that duplicates the note, like that. And then to do a super shortcut, Control-A to select all, and then Control-D to duplicate all 4 of them, and now we've just filled up the whole thing. So let's see what we have now. Cool. Now just for the sake of music, I guess, we can Control-A here and duplicate this so it fills up the whole thing. And play it over and over and over. But at least this way we can hear what's happening. And then, because once it gets to the end here, it's just going to stop. But if we want to keep playing this little section over and over, we can loop it. So we can highlight the selection we want to loop, right-click, and say Loop Selection. It puts these bars around it kind of wraps it up and turns it on up here. You can just turn it off by clicking on it. But this way, when it gets to the end of the bracket here, it'll start back over at the beginning. That way, when we're working on something, we're kind of tweaking things. We can look here and like mess with the knob like this, and hear what's happening in real time. So let's make our drum beat a little bit more interesting. Let's make it a really typical EDM sort of beat. So let's do open hi-hats on every upbeat, which just means I'm doing it every other eighth note. And you can see over here, it's 1/8, so that's eighth. And then we can select these 4 and duplicate them. And then the other typical thing EDM has is a snare and a clap on every 2 and 4. You can do like every 1.2 and every 1.4. So 2, 4, and then duplicate those. Notice I'm selecting the empty space over here as well, so that when it duplicates it with that empty space. So we select all this and duplicate, and see it jumped over those 2 spaces because we kind of copied that with it. Now let's listen. Our drums down over here. This little orange bar is our volume. There we go. And you can see like our VU meters. Yeah. There. And there you go. Basics. That's all you really need to know for right now. That's diving in and getting your hands dirty. You've learned how to make instruments, and you've learned how to create a few notes. That's the basics of everything. From here, it's just learning how the synthesizers work and how the delays work and how to like make your sound a little bit more crisp. And yeah, I hope you learned something, and I hope this video didn't get too terribly long. But I encourage you to just dive in on your own and play around, mess with things. And when you're curious about something, just look it up. Just Google it and see what you find. Like if you're curious how to, like what notes could go well together, or like what chord progressions to use, or those sorts of things. Everything is on Google, I promise. You can learn everything from YouTube tutorials and Wikipedia and all that good stuff. Yay, 21st century. So without further ado, thank you for watching, and just have fun. Cool.